That quiet, persistent ache when everything on paper looks perfect, yet everything inside feels hollow, is more than just a passing mood. It is a profound signal from your inner self. It's a paradox of modern life. We spend years building stability, only to find that comfort isn't always the same as fulfillment. It is one of the most confusing human experiences, looking at your life and seeing that every box is checked. Career, relationships, health, yet feeling an echoing hollowness inside. It's like living in a beautifully furnished house where the electricity just won't turn on. If everything is fine on the outside, the void usually stems from internal or existential disconnects rather than external lacks. We often live by the logic of I'll be happy when I get the job, when I get married, when I buy the house. When you finally reach those goals and the expected magic doesn't happen, the silence that follows can feel like emptiness. Stability can sometimes morph into monotony. When life becomes a series of routines designed for safety rather than growth, your inner self begins to starve for novelty or meaning. When life is chaotic, we survive. When life stabilizes, our brain finally feels safe enough to let old buried emotions surface. That emptiness might actually be a lid kept on top of old grief or trauma you never had time to process. You might be living a life that is good by society's standards, but isn't aligned with your authentic self. If you are playing a role to please others, the you inside feels lonely because it isn't being seen. The natural instinct is to fill the void with noise, social media, overworking, or constant movement. To understand it, you have to do the opposite, observe it. When the feeling hits, don't just say I'm empty. Describe it. Is it a heavy coldness in your chest? Is it a foggy boredom? Giving it a physical description takes it from a scary ghost to a manageable sensation. Ask yourself, if this emptiness had a voice, what would it be asking for? Often, it isn't asking for more stuff, but for more connection, creative expression, or stillness. Reflect on whether your daily actions are driven by shoulds or wants. If your life is built entirely on shoulds, I should do this job, I should act this way, the emptiness is your soul's way of protesting. Instead of seeing emptiness as a defect or a sign that something is wrong with you, try viewing it as a neutral signal. Think of it as a low battery notification for your soul. It doesn't mean the phone is broken, it just means it needs a different kind of power. When the emptiness arises, sit with it for 5 minutes without picking up your phone. Breathe into it. Usually the fear of the feeling is worse than the feeling itself. Emptiness is often a hunger for depth. This might mean having a difficult but honest conversation with a friend, starting a hobby where you're allowed to be a bad beginner, or spending time in nature without an agenda. The specific tension, external stillness versus internal turbulence, is one of the most exhausting ways to live. It's like sailing on a lake that looks like glass to anyone standing on the shore, while underneath the surface, there is a violent current pulling you in different directions. When your life is stable but your inner world is in chaos, it often points to a functional kind of suffering. Human beings have two basic needs that often fight each other: security and aliveness. The golden cage. You may have worked very hard to build a stable life, a good job, a steady routine, a safe home. However, once the survival part of your brain is satisfied, the growth part of your brain wakes up. The conflict. If your stability has become a cage that prevents you from taking risks or expressing your true self, your inner world will feel restless. That instability is actually your spirit trying to break out of a routine that has become too small for you. Sometimes, internal instability comes from things we haven't done. In a stable life, we often keep the peace by staying silent. You might be holding back a truth from a partner, suppressing a creative urge, or ignoring a career change you know you need to make. Even if your external life stays calm, the energy required to keep those secrets or suppressed desires tucked away creates a high-pressure environment inside you. The instability you feel is the friction of holding yourself back. We live in a world that is loud but often shallow. Your external life might be busy with stable things: emails, errands, gym sessions, social obligations. This is sensory overload. But if none of those things touch your heart or challenge your intellect, you experience emotional underload. This gap creates a vibrating sense of anxiety. You feel like you're running a marathon on a treadmill, moving fast, but going nowhere, which makes your inner self feel frantic and unanchored. When your inner home doesn't match your outer home, The solution isn't to blow up your stable life, but to bridge the gap between the two. Throughout the day, ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm maintaining an image of a person who has their life together? Reducing the energy spent on performing stability can calm the internal chaos. Stability can sometimes feel like stagnation. You might need a healthy outlet for intensity. This could be high-intensity exercise, deep artistic expression, or learning something that makes you feel like a messy beginner again. Usually, when we feel unstable inside a stable life, there is one specific thing we are afraid to look at. Is there a conversation you are avoiding? A memory you are running from? Bringing that one thing into the light can often settle the rest of the internal storm. Viewing emptiness not as a hole or a broken part of yourself, but as vast, unallocated space. If we think of our soul as a house, the void is simply an empty room we haven't found the furniture for yet. It is the distance between the life you have curated and the hunger you haven't yet named. We are experts at filling our lives with things that satisfy our social identity, status, comfort, and reliability. However, the space appears when our deeper primal needs go ignored. You are living a life that is efficient and correct. You might actually need raw connection, a sense of awe, or a feeling of being needed for who you are, not just what you do. The emptiness is the buffer zone between the persona you present to the world and the human being who is longing for something more visceral. In art and architecture, negative space is what gives the subject its shape. Without the empty parts, the drawing would just be a solid block of ink. Most people try to pave over this space with distractions because silence is terrifying. But when you pave over a garden, nothing can grow. The void is actually potential energy. It is the space where new versions of you are meant to be born. If your life were 100% full, there would be no room for a new passion, a new philosophy, or a new way of loving. We often try to fill an infinite need with finite things. If you feel a void of meaning, no amount of stable achievements, promotions, purchases, will fill it because those things have boundaries, while your inner space is boundless. This is why the feeling persists even when life is perfect. You are trying to fill a canyon with pebbles. To bridge the gap, you don't need more pebbles. You need to change the nature of what you are putting into that space. You need liquids, things like presence, spirituality, or deep art, that can flow and fill every corner of the void. Instead of trying to get rid of the space, we must learn to inhabit it. This is the difference between running through a dark room and turning on a light to see what's inside. The next time you feel that hollow space between your reality and your needs, don't reach for your phone. Sit in the center of that space. Ask, what is the size of this hunger? Is it a hunger for adventure? For rest? For being truly understood? Sometimes the space exists because you are in a transition. You have outgrown your old self, but your new self hasn't fully arrived. Respecting the emptiness means accepting that you are currently under construction. We often think fulfillment is a full schedule. True fulfillment is actually a resonant life. Look at the space not as a lack of activity, but as a lack of resonance. Start putting things into your life that vibrate at the same frequency as your heart. When we talk about neglecting deep needs, we aren't talking about basic survival. We're talking about the nutrients of the soul. You can have a stable job and a healthy body, but if you are starving for intimacy or honesty, you will feel like a ghost in your own life. One of the fastest ways to create a void is to live a life that is polite but dishonest. Many of us maintain stability by filtering ourselves. We don't say what we think, we don't show our anger, and we hide our weirdness. When you are never fully honest, you are never fully present. If the world only interacts with the mask you wear, the person behind the mask feels invisible and lonely. The emptiness is the gap where your truth should be. You can be surrounded by people every day, colleagues, family, even a partner, and still feel an immense void. Deep human need isn't just about having people around, it's about being witnessed. If your interactions stay at the surface, small talk, logistics, chores, your need for deep proximity goes unmet. We need people who know our fears and our ugly parts. Without that soul-level connection, your social stability just feels like a crowded room where you are a stranger. We often mistake passion for fun or entertainment. In reality, passion is the fuel that makes life feel heavy and significant. A stable life often prioritizes safety over spark. When you stop doing things that make your blood move, whether it's art, a cause you believe in, or a physical challenge, your internal battery stops charging. Emptiness is often just unspent passion. It's the energy you were supposed to use to create or explore, but instead, you kept it locked up to stay stable. That energy turns inward and feels like a hollow ache. We have been taught that emptiness is a black hole that will swallow us if we get too close. So we run. We run into the arms of distractions. We bury ourselves in productivity, or we numb the silence with noise. But here is the cruel irony. Running from the void is like running from your own shadow. The faster you move, the more it haunts you. When you turn around and walk directly into that emptiness, something miraculous happens. It begins to lose its power. Every time you use a distraction to escape the feeling of emptiness, you are inadvertently sending a message to your brain that the feeling is dangerous. You feel a pang of hollowness. You feel anxiety about that hollowness. You scroll on your phone or overwork to drown it out. The feeling is suppressed but not resolved. Because you didn't digest the feeling, it stays in your system, growing heavier. The next time it resurfaces, it's louder because it's trying to get your attention. By escaping, you aren't fixing the void. You are just feeding its hunger for recognition. Confronting the emptiness doesn't mean fixing it immediately. It means witnessing it. When you stop running, you move from being a victim of the feeling to being an investigator of it. When that not okay feeling hits, try sitting still for just 10 minutes. Don't try to make it go away. Just say, okay, the emptiness is here. Let me see what it looks like today. Often the void is actually a cluster of unprocessed emotions, old sadness, a need for change, or a desire for rest. When you face it, the big scary monster usually breaks down into smaller, more manageable human emotions. In a stable, successful life, we are conditioned to believe that every problem needs a solution. But emptiness isn't a math problem. It's a state of being. Sometimes we try to face the void by immediately starting a new hobby or project. That is just productive running. Real confrontation is passive. It is the willingness to feel not okay without needing to change it right away. This creates a psychological muscle called distress tolerance. Once you realize the emptiness won't actually kill you, it stops being a threat and starts being a teacher. When you face the void, you start to realize that it isn't an empty space. It's a reserved space. Ask the emptiness, what are you protecting? Often we feel empty because we are protecting ourselves from a deeper pain. By facing the emptiness, you finally reach the pain, and pain can be healed. Emptiness, on the other hand, can only be endured until it is understood. Once you stop running, you can look at your stable life with clear eyes. You can see which parts of your routine are true and which parts are just fillers used to escape. This allows you to slowly replace the noise with things that actually resonate. To understand the void rather than flee from it, we must change our fundamental relationship with silence. We usually treat emptiness as a technical glitch in our happiness, but understanding it requires us to treat it as data. It is a sophisticated internal communication system that doesn't speak in words, but in absence. Understanding starts with categorization. Not all emptiness is the same. To understand yours, you have to identify its specific aftertaste. If your emptiness feels like a heavy gray fog, it usually means you are overfunctioning. You are stable because you're carrying everything, and your inner self has gone numb to protect you. If it feels like a restless, jittery itch, it's an indication that your current stability has become a ceiling. You have mastered your environment, and there is no newness left to challenge you. If it feels like a hollow ache in your chest even when people are around, it means your relationships are wide but shallow. You aren't being seen for who you are today, but for who you were 5 years ago. Instead of looking at the void as a whole, look at it as a site where something is buried. When you stop running, you can start digging with curiosity. Notice exactly when the feeling hits. Is it Sunday night? Is it right after a successful meeting? Is it when you are alone with your thoughts? The timing of the void tells you which part of your stable life is failing to nourish you. Ask yourself, when was the last time I didn't feel this way? By looking at the moments you felt full, you can identify the specific nutrients, creativity, spontaneity, physical touch, or intellectual debate that are currently missing from your stable diet. Emptiness is a vacuum, and a vacuum's only job is to pull. To understand it, You must figure out what it is trying to pull into your life. The void isn't saying your life is bad, it's saying your life is incomplete. It is a demand for more dimension. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel so empty?" which leads to self-blame, ask, "What is this space reserved for?" This shifts the void from a problem to be solved to a canvas to be painted. It invites curiosity rather than shame. We often run because the silence of the void feels like a scream. To understand it, you have to let the silence speak. Sit down and write a letter from your emptiness to yourself. Let the void speak in the first person. I am the space you created when you stopped painting. Or, I am here because you haven't spoken your truth to your partner in 3 years. When you feel the void, ask why, 5 times. Why do I feel empty? Because I'm bored. Why am I bored? Because my job is repetitive. Why does that matter if it's stable? Because I don't feel like I'm helping anyone. Why is helping important? Because I want to feel useful. Why don't I feel useful? Because I've sacrificed my purpose for a paycheck. Now you have moved from a vague, empty feeling to a concrete realization about your purpose. The void acts as a powerful, uncompromising mirror. It is the distance between your resume life, the version of you that looks successful, stable, and fine, and your inner life, the version of you that has specific raw requirements for joy. When you feel empty despite a stable life, it's because you are successfully maintaining a lifestyle that belongs to a person you no longer are, or perhaps a person you never were. The void is the gap where your evolution should be. A stable life is often built on success metrics, a steady income, a reliable social circle, and a lack of crisis. But the human spirit operates on significance metrics. You might be achieving great things, but if those things don't feel significant to you, your brain registers them as empty noise. The void shows you that while you have built a life that works, you haven't necessarily built a life that matters to you personally. It highlights that efficiency is not a substitute for meaning. Stability is essentially the absence of threat. While we need safety to survive, we need expansion to feel alive. You have minimized risk, your days are predictable, and your future feels secure. The human psyche is designed to explore, to learn, and to be pushed slightly out of its comfort zone. The emptiness is the stale air of a life that has stopped moving. It reveals that you are prioritizing protection over growth. It is telling you that your current stability has become a stagnant pond rather than a flowing river. Often, the stable life we live is a collection of roles we play. The good employee, the reliable partner, the happy friend. You are surrounded by people, yet you feel a social emptiness. This happens when you're being loved for your usefulness rather than your essence. The void reveals that you need a different kind of connection, one that doesn't require a performance. It shows the gap between the social harmony you've created and the emotional intimacy you are starving for. It tells you that you'd rather be truly seen for your flaws than admired for a fake perfection. Stability is often a long-term investment. We work hard today so we can be fine in 20 years. You are living in the future, constantly preparing and maintaining. The soul only knows the now. It needs beauty, play, and sensory experience today. The void is the sound of the present moment being empty. It reveals that you are intellectually satisfied with your plan, but emotionally malnourished in your process. It exposes the difference between building a life and actually inhabiting one. Understanding this difference allows you to stop trying to fix the void and start adjusting your life. Look at your schedule. Which parts of it belong to the life you live out of obligation? Which parts belong to the life you need? If the ratio is 90/10, the void will remain. Once a week, do something that has no purpose for your stability, but feeds your need. This could be a difficult hike, an honest conversation that risks the calm of a relationship, or an artistic project that might fail. Sometimes the life you need has changed, because you have changed. The void is simply the space where your new self is waiting for you to catch up. You must have the courage to stand in the middle of your stable, perfect life and say, "This is not enough." For many of us, the heaviest thing we carry is the image of having it all together. We spend massive amounts of internal energy maintaining the everything is fine facade. When you admit to yourself, "I am stable, I am safe, but I am empty," you stop the energy leak. The moment you stop pretending, the performance ends. There is an immediate physical sense of relief that comes from no longer having to lie to yourself. You are no longer holding up a heavy mask. You are finally just standing there, as you are. In a world that measures wealth by what we own and achieve, admitting that you are spiritually or emotionally poor feels like a failure. It takes immense strength to say, I have the career and the house, but I have no idea who I am without them. This admission strips away the false layers. It allows you to stop trying to decorate the outside and start tending to the inside. Lightness comes when you realize that your value isn't tied to your stability, but to your humanity. Lightness is not the same as happiness. It is the absence of resistance. Admit that you cannot fix the emptiness with more work or more noise. Admit that you are afraid of the silence. When you admit your fear, the fear stops being a monster and becomes a companion. You stop fighting the void and start flowing with it. This is the lightness of the traveler. You realize you don't need to carry the whole world on your shoulders. You just need to walk your own path. This isn't about a one-time confession. It's a daily practice of transparency. Find one person you trust, or even just a private journal, and say the dangerous thing out loud. I feel lonely even when I'm with you. Or, I've achieved my goals, and I still feel like I'm waiting for my life to start. When someone says you have such a great life, you don't have to agree if you don't feel it. You don't have to be ungrateful, but you can be honest. I'm very lucky, but I'm also going through a period of figuring out what's missing. To find lightness, you must literally lighten the load. Based on your admission of what you don't need, what can you stop doing today? What can you let go of? The path to lightness is a process of shedding. You don't become light by adding more. You become light by letting go of everything that isn't truly you. Once the heavy layers of pretense and forced stability fall away, you'll find that you don't need to fill the void. You just need the room to breathe.